Imagine getting pulled over for something minor, only to have things take a shocking turn. That's exactly what happened to one woman when a routine traffic stop spiraled out of control. A cop, clearly on a power trip, decided to destroy her license right in front of her eyes, without a second thought. But here's the twist. What he didn't know could change everything. Turns out, she's not just anyone, she's the mayor's sister. And when the truth comes out, it's a whole different story. What happens next? Let's just say, this officer is in for a reality check he never saw coming. Stay tuned to see how it all unfolds and what lessons can be learned from this intense encounter. This story is more than just about one moment. It's about accountability, respect, and the unexpected twists life can throw our way. As the woman sat in her car, stunned by what had just happened, she couldn't believe the officer's attitude. She had done nothing wrong, just a simple traffic stop for a minor issue, yet the cop's tone was anything but professional. His harsh words and dismissive actions made it clear he wasn't interested in listening. Instead of treating her with respect, he tore up her license right in front of her, as if to prove a point. The woman tried to stay calm, but frustration was building. She knew she had to handle this carefully. What would the mayor say if he found out? Would the officer realize his mistake before it was too late? As tension filled the air, the officer smirked, thinking he had all the power. But little did he know, this wasn't over. Something told her this encounter was about to take a very unexpected turn. The woman took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel tightly as the officer walked back to his patrol car, acting like he had just won some kind of battle. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. In the back of her mind, she wondered if this was really happening. Was it about her, or was it something more? She glanced around, noticing a few people watching from a distance, their curious eyes fixed on the scene. The officer, still unaware of who he was dealing with, seemed confident, almost too confident. Meanwhile, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a message from her brother, the mayor. Should she tell him what happened? Would that escalate things? A mix of emotions swirled inside her: anger, disbelief, and the undeniable urge to stand up for herself. As she debated her next move, the officer returned, now with a different tone, but the damage was already done. Something told her this wasn't just about a license, it was about something much bigger. The woman could feel her heart pounding as the officer stood outside her window, his expression hard to read. He leaned in slightly, his voice dripping with authority. "You people never learn, do you?" He muttered under his breath, thinking she wouldn't catch it. Her stomach turned, but she stayed calm, refusing to give him the reaction he was expecting. She could sense his arrogance, the way he thrived on the power he thought he had. But inside, she was already thinking ahead. She wasn't just any ordinary driver, and soon enough, he'd realize that. She carefully reached for her phone, scrolling through her contacts. One call could change everything, but should she make it now? The officer tapped on the car roof impatiently, clearly growing irritated. "Step out of the car," he ordered. Her fingers hovered over the screen. The tension was unbearable, and she knew things were about to take a serious turn. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly opened the car door and stepped out, feeling the officer's eyes on her every move. The street was quiet now, but the weight of the situation was heavier than ever. As she stood there, trying to stay composed, the officer smirked and crossed his arms. "Let's see how far that attitude gets you," he said, clearly enjoying the moment. But just as he reached for his radio, another car pulled up, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. Her pulse quickened. She recognized the car immediately. The door opened, and out stepped a well-dressed man with a stern expression. It was her brother's chief of staff. The officer's smirk faltered for just a second, but he quickly recovered. "This is an active stop," he said defensively. The man didn't flinch. "I suggest you think carefully about what you're doing," he replied calmly. The officer's confidence wavered, but his pride wouldn't let him back down just yet. Tension filled the air, and she knew this was far from over. The officer's face hardened as he glanced between the woman and the man standing before him. I don't care who you are, he snapped, gripping his belt. She was driving without a valid license. The chief of staff remained calm, his gaze steady. That's not your call to make anymore, he said firmly, handing over a folder with official documents. The officer hesitated, flipping through the papers. His expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief as he realized the truth. Her license was never invalid. It had been a clerical mistake, and he had just destroyed it without cause. The woman watched as his confidence crumbled, his posture stiffening with regret. Look, I didn't know, he started, but it was too late. The radio on his shoulder crackled, and a voice came through. Officer, report to headquarters immediately. His eyes widened. The woman crossed her arms, meeting his gaze. Maybe next time, you'll think twice. Just as she thought it was over, the chief of staff leaned in and whispered something to the officer that made his face turn pale. She didn't know what was said, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. The officer stood there, speechless, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. He nodded stiffly, then turned and walked back to his patrol car without another word. The woman watched him go, a mix of relief and frustration settling in her chest. She had done nothing wrong, yet she had been treated like she didn't belong. It wasn't just about the license. It was about respect, something she hoped he had finally learned. The chief of staff placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Let's get this straightened out, he said with a small smile. She nodded, grateful that the truth had come out. As they drove away, she couldn't help but think about how differently things could have gone if she hadn't stood her ground. In the end, the encounter left her with one thought: standing up for yourself matters, no matter who you are. And as for the officer, well, his lesson had only just begun.